talking to you. In these particular lectures, I'll be giving you an insight about the fundamentals related to economics. We'll also be discussing about the importance of this subject, the books and the study materials which you need to refer. And at the same time, we need to discuss the syllabus also and what should be our strategy. At the end, I'll also be discussing with you as to what I'll be covering when I'll be teaching you this particular subject at Unique Academy. Going forward, many of you must have certain basic understanding about this particular subject. In your graduation days, you must have studied. Few of you might not also, but then if you take this subject, its principles are applied by you on day-to-day basis, whether you have realized or not. In your day-to-day life, right from deciding what you will be having in the breakfast, what you need to have in the lunch, and what you need to have, what you will be having in dinner. So each and every decision of yours, somewhere or the other, involves economic principles. Today, when you are sitting in front of me, attending this demo lecture, this is also an economic decision by you. Why economic decision? Because you will be paying certain money to the institute in the form of fee. And since you will be paying that money, you want to check it out through demo lecture, whether you will be getting worth of the money which you will be spending or not. So this decision of yours as to whether you need to attend demo lecture also is an economic decision. Out of different institutes in Pune, you must have taken few sample of good institutes in Pune, must have taken feedback from your friends, from your relative. You must have inquired about the fee here and fee there. You must have inquired about the overall distance from your place of residence to this institute. Now, each and everything, after deciding each and everything, you have finally decided that you should try for Unique Academy, and that's why you have seated here for the demo session. Don't you think when you go to buy vegetables, so if seller quotes a price for something, you start bargaining, or as a consumer you always try to buy a particular good at a lower price possible. What is this? This also somewhere talks about economics and economic principles. Have you ever experienced someday when you spent 15 rupees for a vada pav, and after spending 15 rupees, if you are not totally satisfied, तो दिन भर आपके दिमाग में एक बात आती रहती है, यार 15 रुपये वेस्ट हो गए. बट ऑन द अदर हैंड, अगर उस 15 रुपीज से आपको एक जंबो वड़ा पाव मिला, वेयर यू फील सेटिस्फाइड, तो यू फील that you have got the worth of 15 rupees which you have spent. Have you ever thought that why your parents go to offices or go to their business each and every day? Have you ever thought why I am here today? Have you ever thought what is the main reason behind you being here today? So if for all these you will try to find out the reasons as to why you are here, why I am here, why your parents go to offices each and every day, whether it's rainy or whether it's sunny or whatever it may be. So you'll be getting one common answer, and the common answer is we want to make money, we want to add on to resources. So in economics, the real challenge is resources. In economics, the real challenge is resources. And that's why you are here today. That's why I am here today. And that's why your parents go to offices each and every day. अगर आप मुझसे कितना भी पूछो कि सर आप यहाँ पर क्यों हो, और मैं बोलूं कि I love economics, I want to teach economics, और that's why I am here, तो आप बोलोगे ना कि सर छोड़ो ये सब बातें, अल्टीमेट ऑब्जेक्टिव यही है to make money. And I accept this. I also accept this, considering the ultimate or main objective is that only. Resource, a type of resource. So in economics, the focus point is resource. Giving you another example, whenever you are taking decision as to what you need to have in the breakfast, so don't you think कि on any restaurant, in any restaurant, you get lot of varieties. You do have vendu vada, idli sambar, other continental breakfast, and our favorite pohe. But as a student, don't you think you want to have each and everything also? You want to enjoy all these things. But having said, don't you think you are completely in a conflicting situation in the morning? भाई पोहे खाकर काम चला लें, या इडली सांभर खाएं, या फिर कोई कंटिनेंटल ब्रेकफास्ट ले? मन तो करता है ना? As a rational consumer, don't you think you want to have? But then last में आपको अपने पॉकेट देकर ये डिसीजन लेना पड़ता है कि चलो आज पोहे ही ठीक है. Why it's so? It's simply because you do lack certain resources, and on relative terms, resources are limited. अगर मैं आपसे पूछूं कि how have you come to this place, which mode of transport you have used, तो आप में से कोई बोलेगा कि मैं डांडी मार्च करके आया हूं. दूसरा कोई बोलेगा कि आई हैव यूज्ड पब्लिक ट्रांसपोर्ट. तीसरा कोई बोलेगा कि आई हैव माय ओन व्हीकल. चौथा कोई बोलेगा कि आई हैव माय BMW with my driver, and that's how I've come to this particular place. A BMW with my driver all together, that's what encouraged me also. मेरा भी मन करता है कि एक BMW होता और एक ड्राइवर होता उसके साथ तो बहुत अच्छा होता, मन ही करता. But considering the resource base, again, considering the resource constraints, I cannot afford to have BMW with a driver, and ultimately I am forced to drive my two-wheeler to come to this particular place. Why it's happened? It's happened because resources limited. Tell me about any rational consumer who does not think to enjoy hospitality at JW Marriott. आप लोग अगर यूनिक एकेडमी आते हो तो सुबह शाम उसी रास्ते से जाओ. मैं भी 10 सालों से उसी रास्ते से आता हूँ. मेरा भी मन करता है यार JW मैरियट में मैं भी हॉस्पिटैलिटी एंजॉय करता तो बहुत ही अच्छा मन करता है. जाते जाते इन द नाइट मैं सोचता हूँ यार डिनर यही लेकर जाऊं तो अच्छा होता. सी, अनलिमिटेड वांट्स, अनलिमिटेड डिमांड्स. जो भी देखते हैं मन करता है मेरे पास होता तो बहुत अच्छा होता. बट वी कैन नॉट हैव ईच एंड एवरीथिंग. व्हाई? बिकॉज the resources with us are limited. So when we talk about economics, we are largely focused upon two important components. At one hand, we are talking about limited resource base, and on the other, we are talking about unlimited wants. So economics teaches you how you can make optimum use of these limited resources so that you can fulfill your maximum wants. Now, what do you mean by optimum use? Optimum use of resource. What do you mean by it? Let's say for Unique Academy, I'm also a resource base. I'm a human resource. Taking an example that Unique pays me for 8 hours. So Unique will always like that I should start teaching at 8 o'clock and I should end up at 4 o'clock. 8 hours. But 8 to 10 when I'll be taking the lecture, I'll be very energetic. But if I continue to take from 10 to 12 or 10:30 to 12, so theek hai, I can take. But don't you think as a resource, it may not be possible for me to deliver a lecture, the third lecture in a day, subsequent lecture from 12 to 2, because I may not be high at energy and I may not be able to deliver it smoothly the way I should, considering the needs and requirements of each and every student in the class. Don't you think that will mar the performance of mine as well as the organization? Don't you think when you will be asking me questions in the third lecture, I may not be that much positively responding, and that's what affect the performance of the organization or the performance of the class as well. So this can be maximum utilization, but this cannot be optimum. Whenever you talk about optimum utilization, it simply means that instead of this, if my director sir said, sir, what do? You take 2 hours lecture in the morning, then take a break, prepare for tomorrow or prepare for the next lecture, and take one lecture in the evening. That's all for the day. Rest time, you prepare notes, rest time, you go for value addition in your subject so that students are updated each and every time. So that's what can be considered to be optimum utilization. So in economics, what matters most is optimum utilization. In economics, we are not concerned about maximum utilization. Is it fine? Are you in line with me, all of you? Taking the discussion forward, if I ask you to offer me tea or coffee today, हो सकता है you can happily take me also. Tomorrow again, I ask for you, from you. उस दिन again सोचोगे चलो गरीब आदमी है पिला देता हूं. But when the third day when I'll be asking you, you may say कि सर आज पैसा नहीं है, या you may say कि सर आज आप ही खर्च करो. There is a reason behind why you will say so. The reason is limited resource base with you. Have you ever experienced at your home? And you must have experienced also कि आपके घर में किसी की बर्थडे सेलिब्रेशंस हो रही है. So when the birthday celebration or a function gets over, in the mid of the night, in the home, there is a lot of parliamentary discussions regarding किसने क्या दिया. Do you agree with me? And you start comparing also कि हमने उनको ऐसा दिया था, उन्होंने ऐसा दिया. I'm not saying whether this is right and wrong. I'm not the right person to say. But then ऐसा होता है कि नहीं होता है? So tell me what can be the reasons. I always consider it to be right because it's obvious that since with you resources are limited, you must have gifted a something precious. So in turn, you are expecting that also. But then on the social side, that may not be considered to be right. But on the economics front, if I say that whether that was right or wrong, so that is always right because since I'm struggling with limited resource, मैंने अच्छा gift किया था, so that's why I was expecting same from you. आपके घर में कोई गेस्ट आए हैं और गेस्ट जब जा रहे हैं तो आपको 2000 रुपए का नोट आपके हाथ में दे दिया. हाउ डू यू फील अबाउट इट? कितने अच्छे गेस्ट थे. Now you tell me, that's what our perception. So definitely we become conscious wherein we say that these guests are, we appreciate कि अच्छे थे, simply 2000 रुपए आपको मिल गए. अगर मेरे से कोई गरीब आपके गेस्ट आए एंड आई विश यू ऑल द बेस्ट, 2 दिन खाना खाए और अगर ये बोलकर चले गए आई विश यू ऑल द बेस्ट, दिल से मैंने बोला, फिर भी इस मैटेरियलिस्टिक गेन्स में दैट इज नॉट रिक्वायर्ड. What I'm trying to tell you that in your day-to-day life, these things take place without your realization that the causes behind it are economics. Going forward, if the price of tomatoes now has increased, it's around 80 rupees per kg. Have you ever experienced your mother's behavior और माता जी का अपने बिहेवियर किचन में कभी देखा है? जब टमाटो की प्राइस बढ़ गई है, कभी उनकी चॉपिंग स्टाइल एक्सपीरियंस करना. और द सेम when the prices of that commodity has decreased to 10 rupees per kg, तुम देखना उनकी चॉपिंग स्टाइल क्या है. I tell you, when the price will become 80 rupees per kg, so she will be chopping the tomato as if it has become so much precious. थोड़ा सा भी वेस्टेज नहीं हो. बट अगर वही 10 रुपये प्राइस हो गए तो देखो कैसे चॉप करेंगी कि अगर वो टमाटर अपनी ऑटोबायोग्राफी लिखे तो उस विमेन को बहुत कर्ज करेगा कि इसने मुझे कैसे काटा है. When I am priced less. At the same time, उसके कंजम्पशन देखो कि आपके घरों में टमाटो का इतना यूज होगा, मल्टीपर्पज यूज होगा, एज इफ यू फील कि आपके घर में टोमेटिनो फेस्टिवल है. I mean, see, these are consumer behavior towards a particular product when it is being priced or it is being, it is being priced high or it is being priced low. So we need to understand कि आखिर ऐसा क्यों है. It's simply because कि when the prices are very, very high, the consumer has become over conscious, and that's why it is going for restricted use of that particular product. बट वही प्राइस कम हो गया तो आप देखोगे सैलेड में भी टमाटर है, हर एक भाजी में टमाटर है, कोई भी भाजी में टमाटर विदाउट टमाटर तुमको नहीं दिखेगा. पल्सेस में टमाटर, ईच एंड एवरीथिंग, कहीं ना कहीं तुमको टोमेटिनो फेस्टिवल का एक एक्सपीरियंस मिलेगा. द सेकेंड एग्जाम्पल व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू टेल यू कि अगर इकोनॉमिक्स आप डे टू डे बेसिस पर जो डिसीजन लेते हैं तो आप डिसीजंस में इकोनॉमिक्स कैसे इन्वॉल्व होता है. मान लीजिए कि आपने वो शर्ट खरीदा तो वो शर्ट खरीदने में आपने बहुत फैक्टर देखा होगा और एक फैक्टर जरूर होगा प्राइस और आपकी अफोर्डेबिलिटी. प्राइस और अफोर्डेबिलिटी को देखकर आपने डिसीजन लिया होगा कि वेदर यू शुड बाय नाइकी, रीबॉक or whether you should go for Vimal, Siaram or Jairam. Why? What can be the reasons? The reason can be limited resource. आप बताओ मुझे कि आप 1 लाख रुपए जो फी यहां पे करने वाले हो, उस फी पे करने के पहले तुमने कितना रिसर्च किया होगा. और ये गलत नहीं है. आई एम नॉट क्रिटिसाइजिंग इट. दिस इज राइट फ्रॉम इकोनॉमिक्स पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू. मैंने तो सिंपल सी बात बोला कि आप भाजी खरीदने चाहते हो और आपको बटाटा 15 रुपए केजी मिल रहा है और कहीं दूर से आवाज आई कि 14 रुपीज पर केजी, तो आप ये बटाटा छोड़ देते हो और वहां पर जाते हो जहां पर 14 रुपीज पर केजी मिल रहा है. इट्स नॉट रॉन्ग. Whether you buy or do not buy, it's not wrong from economics point of view. So overall, when we talk about economics, so largely we give emphasis on two important things. One is limited resource, and the second part is unlimited wants. And economics teaches us how with these limited resources we can try to manage our unlimited wants, and how we can start making priorities or choices. At your home, you must have experienced that your mother at the start of the month must be giving a long list to your dad, और डैड ने उस लिस्ट को मॉनिटर किया, और उस लिस्ट को मॉनिटर करने के बाद उनका ये जो रिस्पॉन्स आया होगा, आप सोचो, ये ठीक है, ये ठीक है, ये पिछले मंथ आया था, खत्म हो गया क्या? ये अगले मंथ नहीं हो सकता है क्या? अभी मोबाइल फोन क्या जरूरी था क्या? I mean, have you ever thought of these discussions at your home? These discussions simply said कि the problem is of limited resource, the problem is of unlimited wants, and that's what, जब ऐसी problem है, तो what you are trying to do, you are trying to prioritize. पहली priority मेरी क्या है, दूसरी priority क्या है, तीसरी priority क्या है? That's what in economics most of the times we do, considering the limited resources. Understood? Are you getting? अगर आप मान लो आपकी सैलरी जो यहां पर आती है 10,000 रुपीज घर से आती होगी, तो आपकी पहली प्रायोरिटी क्या होती है? शेरा या शमशेरा? देखो, ये पहली प्रायोरिटी होती है? नहीं। सिंस आपकी इकोनॉमिक ऑब्जेक्टिव है टू प्रिपेयर फॉर यूपीएससी, तो आपकी प्रायोरिटी क्या होती होगी कि भाई इतना ही रुपया है, मुझे एक मंथ ये करना है, इसी में मैनेज करना है। तो आप पहले करते हो कि व्हाट मनी आई शुड पे टू दी रेंट, पहले रेंट निकाल देते हो, खाने का निकाल देते हो, फिर उसके बाद बुक्स स्टेशनरी के लिए लगते हो। सो you said you make priorities or not for a month depending upon whatever amount of money you are getting. So बताइए, अगर नहीं रहता, आपके पास लिमिटेड रिसोर्स नहीं रहता, तो डेफिनेटली आप क्या करते? जो मन चाहते आप करते कि नहीं? बट इकोनॉमिक्स में ऐसा नहीं होता। समझ में आ रहा? वाओ, हाउ रिच यू विल बी, there is always in the environment on relative terms resources are limited. Understood? Don't you think Mukesh Ambani is also struggling? उनको क्या है, अगर हम लोग देखें and we compare ourselves to him, तो हमें लगेगा कि यार उनको क्या करने की जरूरत है, but then each and every day he is taking a lot of decisions. He resigned from Reliance Jio Infocom and made his son to be the chairman. तो उसको इतना करने की जरूरत क्या है जब सब कुछ है उसके पास? सिंपली फ्रॉम हीज पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू विल थिंक ना, तो उसको लग रहा होगा कि यार अभी एशिया का रिचेस्ट हो, वर्ल्ड का रिचेस्ट हो जाता तो बहुत अच्छा होता। उसके एंगल से देखेंगे, सो ही इज ऑल्सो स्ट्रगलिंग विद समथिंग कॉल्ड लिमिटेड रिसोर्स। उसके लिए ड्रीम्स, डिजायर्स, वांट्स आर समथिंग डिफरेंट, but then he is also struggling with the same thing, that is limited resources. Is it fine, all of you? So largely at individual level, such is the application of economics and its economics principles. Going forward, have you ever realized that in India there are lot many challenges, lot many problems? We do have problem of poverty, we do have problem of inflation, we do have problem of unemployment, we do have the problem of farmer committing suicide, we do have the problem of agrarian distress. So how these problems can be resolved? How these problems can be resolved? And for that, we need to apply economic principles. We need to come out with certain schemes, programs, so that these problems can be resolved. But whatever may be the challenge with the economy, whatever may be the problem with the economy, if somebody asks you, what is the central problem being faced by any economy? So the central problem being faced by any economy is nothing but limited resource. आप बताइए कि हमारे पास लिमिटेड रिसोर्स नहीं रहते और रिसोर्सेज एबंडेंस रहते, so we could have largely resolved the problem of बेरोजगारी, महंगाई, गरीबी. But since the central problem being faced by any economy, take any economy, whether you take USA or China or any poor economy like African, some of the African economies, the central problem being faced is limited resources. Limited resources. So today, if the government of India is formulating certain policies, if the government of India is launching few policies, Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, Integrated Child Development Scheme, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Program, National Food Security Act. So there is a reason. The reason is the government want to resolve certain challenges being faced by economy, either hunger and starvation, either poverty, unemployment, or other related challenges. Today, in our economy, if you talk about how economy is struggling on inflation front, where the prices are rising each and every day. So recently you must have read in the newspaper that RBI has increased the repo rate. So when RBI has increased the repo rate, interest rates in the economy will increase. And when interest rates in the economy will increase, that will reduce the overall demand in the economy, and that will reduce the price also. So when a particular challenge is being faced by the economy in terms of inflation, there is policy, there is an institution which takes care of it, and it has increased the repo rate so as to bring down the price. So where you study this? You all study this under something called economics. So largely in the class where we'll be starting, so we'll be largely focusing upon the concepts, the fundamentals related with macroeconomics, related with Indian economy. And the objective will be that you understand the concepts, you learn the concepts, and you will start applying these concepts also so as to better understand the economics and the impacts of economic principles. Talking about now UPSC and the study material related to it. So the first thing which I want to tell you about economics is that don't follow friends' philosophy. Friends' philosophy here, I mean to say that कि तुम्हारे फ्रेंड ने ऐसा किया था वो तुम्हारे लिए भी अप्लाई होगा, that may not sound true. Whatever a study material will be told to you, you need to follow religiously without giving a second thought to it, and you need to advance in that direction only. So the first thing which you need to do is to start reading newspapers. Start reading newspapers. You may say that, sir, since we do not know the fundamentals of economics, if we'll be reading newspapers, we may not be able to understand it. That's true. But even though you cannot understand, you please give a reading to it. Somebody will say that why you are reading newspaper each and every day, that consumes a lot of time. You read newspapers only before the exam. Please do not follow even these suggestions, even though आपके भगवान आपसे कहे तो. Reading newspapers is one of the important part of preparation for UPSC. So the importance which you give to a particular book, more than it, you should give importance to the reading of a newspaper. I know that at the initial stage, you may not be able to understand, but then later on what will happen, if you will be developing clarity regarding economic concepts, so definitely you will start getting it, you will start understanding it, and when you will be understanding it, you will start applying those economic terminology in your day-to-day life also, and that's what UPSC requires. In UPSC, as far as economics is concerned, it's not only about mugging up the facts and figures, it's about critical analysis of the concepts, interpretations of the concepts, and application of those concepts in day-to-day life. At the initial stage, the time consumption in reading newspaper will be high, but the moment you start understanding, the time consumption also will go down. You will be flooded with lot of query, you will be flooded with lot of confusions, doubt, but trust me, this is only the best way to learn. This is only the best path wherein you will be able to analyze, interpret, understand all these economic concepts. At the initial stage, try to have a pen with you when you will be reading newspaper, and try to underline certain few terms and terminology which you are not understanding. When you will be underlining that concepts, so once you complete reading newspaper, you need to go and check with Google. You need to go and check with lot of economic dictionary, finance and economics dictionary available, and there you try to understand. Even though if you do not understand, come in the class and discuss. But then you cannot give second priority to reading newspaper. This should be the foremost or first priority for you all. The second important point is that since you all will be attending lectures, you will be joining Unique Academy, you go through the notes which will be given to you in the class, other study material given to you by Academy. You will also should go through summary of economic survey being given to you from the Academy. Along with it, the NCERT books of economics from class 11th and 12th. In between, you also should go through Yojana and Kurukshetra. This is minimum guarantee program for getting good marks in economics. Now, आपको लगेगा कि इतना कम मैंने क्यों पढ़ने के लिए बोला है? मैंने पहले ही बता दिया. I am assuming that you will be attending lectures. You will be attending lectures. See, if you will be going through it, that I can promise you that 90% of the questions somewhere or the other will be part of all this. And I do not want that you should spend 90% of your time on 10% of the things which are not here. That's what a strategy you need to adopt. So largely when you'll be preparing, you always try for 90% of the thing rather than 10% of the things which consumes lot of time, and when you'll be going for it, so you'll be compromising other contents, other chapters as well as other subjects also. So you need to have a strategic thought wherein when you'll be planning what you need to read and what you should not. Notes about notes. Largely, notes will be circulated to you in the class. Apart from it, I'll also be dictating few of the points, few of the interpretations of economic variables in the class also. So that's what you need to keep with you. You need to revise, and that will be more than enough for you when you will be reading it, when you will be revising those notes, class notes. Now, what will be covering under pre and what will be covering under mains? For prelims, I'll be starting with microeconomics, few topics of microeconomics are important for you when you are preparing for UPSC. In microeconomics, we'll be studying about the nature of microeconomics, importance of microeconomics. We'll also be discussing what do you mean by demand from a consumer point of view, what do you mean by supply from, say, producer point of view, seller point of view, what are the different factors which affect consumption demand, what do you mean by elasticity of demand, what are the different types of elasticity of demand, what do you mean by price elasticity of demand, what do you mean by income elasticity of demand, what do you mean by cross elasticity of demand, what do you mean by cost of production, what do you mean by explicit cost, what do you mean by implicit cost, what do you mean by economic cost, private cost, social cost, opportunity cost. All these things will be discussing under microeconomics. Besides, we will also be discussing the meaning of economies of scale, the meaning of diseconomies of scale, the market, the types of market on the basis of nature of competition. What do you mean by perfect competition? What do you mean by monopoly? What do you mean by oligopoly? What do you mean by monopolistic competition? All these things will be our part of discussion under something called microeconomics. Understood? Here, what will be the focus? The focus will be that you understand these concepts, because as far as these concepts are concerned, these are largely applied in macroeconomics as well. So in order to understand macroeconomics better, you need to understand these concepts of microeconomics. Understood? And I'll tell you also how it is being related. In microeconomics, I'll be teaching you something called elasticity. And this term is widely used in macroeconomics also. Let's say if I'm saying tax elastic, if I'm saying employment elastic, so employment, tax are subject of macroeconomics or not. So unless and until you understand the concept of elasticity, how will be able to understand these concept called employment elastic and tax elastic. So once you are done with microeconomics, then I'll be taking up something called macroeconomics. Macroeconomics. And here the focus will be Indian economy. समझ में रहा? Macroeconomics में जो context होगा, largely जो explanation होगा, that is based on Indian economy. पहला जो टॉपिक हम मैक्रो इकोनॉमिक्स में लेंगे, मीनिंग नेचर हम देखेंगे मैक्रो इकोनॉमिक्स का. देन विल बी टॉकिंग अबाउट नेशनल इनकम. Then we'll be talking about inflation. We'll also be talking about money and banking. We'll also be talking about public finance, financial markets, foreign exchange market and balance of payment. Foreign exchange market and balance of payment. See, in the regular lectures, we'll be going in a sequence. First of all, I'll be teaching you microeconomics. Then under macroeconomics, I'll be going in the same pattern only the way I am telling you today. Understood? So these are largely topics which are part of prelims. Apart from it, the current affairs or current updates in economics. Current updates in economics. Understood? So let's say if I have taught you, if I'm teaching you inflation and there is a current update on inflation, so definitely in that class only, I'll be taking up that current updates also so that you are updated. Or if in any topic which I am teaching you, if there are certain current developments which are taking place, so definitely in that topic only, I will be taking up that current update so that you are completely updated with day-to-day, dynamics in economics also. Now, exploring, अब आपको देखकर लग रहा होगा कि क्या माइक्रो इकोनॉमिक्स में इतना ही पढ़ना है? नहीं. When I'll be exploring each and every topic, so let's say if I'm talking about national income, so I'll be teaching you what are the different macroeconomic aggregates. What do you mean by GDP? What do you mean by GNP? What do you mean by GDP at factor cost? What do you mean by GDP at market price? What do you mean by nominal income? What do you mean by real income? What do you mean by GDP deflator? What do you mean what are the limitations of GDP as a measure of economic welfare? What are the method of national income calculation? What do you mean by product method or output method? What do you mean by expenditure method? What do you mean by income method? Understood? Apart from it, we'll also be talking about Human Development Index. We'll also be talking about how in India, national income is calculated based on old methodology. How in India, national income is calculated based on new methodology. What are the points of differences? What are the points of similarities? Whether we should follow the old or new, all these will be part of our discussions under national income. Is it fine to you all? When we'll be talking about inflation, largely we'll be focusing upon the meaning of inflation. We'll be talking about types of inflation. Under types of inflation, we'll be talking about what do you mean by demand pull inflation? What do you mean by cost push inflation? What are the different forms of inflation? What do you mean by deflation? What do you mean by disinflation? What do you mean by hyperinflation? What do you mean by galloping inflation? Creeping inflation? Understood? Philip curve, stagflation, all these will be different forms of inflation. Besides, we'll also be talking about, what are the measures, what are the impact of inflation? Impact of inflation on a poor individual, impact of inflation on exports, impact of inflation on foreign exchange rate, impact of inflation on creditors, impact of inflation on debtors, all these impact will also be studying. Besides this, we'll also be studying what are the different tools how do we measure inflation? What do you mean by wholesale price index? What do you mean by consumer price index? All these things will be studying. Understood? All of you? समझ रहे हैं आप लोग? एक बार इन्फ्लेशन जैसे ही हमने पढ़ा, उसके बाद हम लोग ये भी पढ़ेंगे मनी एंड बैंकिंग. What do you mean by money? What are the different functions of money? What do you mean by demand for money? What do you mean by transaction demand? What do you mean by precautionary demand? What do you mean by speculative demand? What do you mean by liquidity trap in an economy? What are the different forms of supply? Whether money supply is a flow variable or a stock variable? What do you mean by reserve money? What do you mean by high powered money? What do you mean by monetary base of the economy? What do you mean by M0? What do you mean by M1? Why M1 is narrow money? What is broad money? What is M1, M2, M3, M4? What do you mean by liquidity aggregates? What are the new monetary aggregates? What do you mean by NM1? What do you mean by NM2? What do you mean by NM3, L1, L2, L3? What do you mean by credit multiplier, deposit multiplier, role of RBI? What do you mean by monetary policy? What are the different tools of monetary policy? What do you mean by repo rate? What do you mean by reverse repo rate? What do you mean by marginal standing facility? What do you mean by open market operations, a statutory liquidity ratio? All these things we'll be discussing under money and banking. NPA, non-performing assets, Basel norms, Basel 1, Basel 2, Basel 3. All these will be part of our discussion under money and banking. Then we'll be talking about public finance. You know, when we talk about public finance, it largely means government finance. It largely means government finance. और public finance की जब हम बात करते हैं, so we'll be talking about revenue. We'll be talking about expenditure. We'll be talking about deficits. We'll be talking about debt. What are the different components of budget? What do you mean by revenue receipts? What do you mean by tax receipts? What do you mean by non-tax receipts? What do you mean by capital receipts? What do you mean by revenue deficit, budgetary deficit, fiscal deficit, primary deficits, effective revenue deficit? And then once deficit is covered, we'll also be talking about public debt, internal debt, external debt. What are the components of internal debt? What are the components of external debt? Whether a state can borrow from outside or not. All these will be our part of discussion under something called public finance. उसके बाद हम लोग ये भी डिस्कस करेंगे पब्लिक फाइनेंस के अंदर कि डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट जो हो रहे हैं हमारे कंट्री में. अभी LIC का डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट किया गवर्नमेंट ने थ्रू IPO. So what is repercussions on the economy? Whether government should go for disinvestment or not? Whether when the government has gone for 100% disinvestment of BPCL, Bharat Petroleum Corporation Limited, whether that is right or wrong. So all these will be part of our discussion on the public finance. Once public finance gets over, we'll be taking up financial markets. Under financial markets, we'll be talking about money market, capital market. Under money market, there are different instruments like repos hai, CP hai, commercial paper hai, certificates of deposits hai, collateralized lending and borrowing obligations hai, money market mutual funds hai, non-convertible debentures हैं, call money क्या होता है, notice money क्या होता है, call rates क्या होता है. All these will be part of our discussion under something called money market. यहाँ पर छोटा दिख रहा था, but छोटा है नहीं. एक बार money market हो गया, so definitely we'll be going for capital market. Under capital market, what are the primary market? What are the new issue market? What is IPO? What is FPO? What is bonus issue? What is right issue? What is private placement? Again, in capital market, one part is primary market, the second is secondary market. What do you mean by stock market? What do you mean by Bombay Stock Exchange? What do you mean by National Stock Exchange? What do you mean by Sensex? What do you mean by Nifty? What do you mean by bull? What do you mean by bear? What do you mean by buyback of shares? What do you mean by insider trading? Short selling? All these will be studying. Last part under prelims, we'll be talking about foreign exchange market and balance of payment, foreign currency, how the exchange rate happens of one currency to another. What do you mean by appreciation of a currency? What do you mean by depreciation of a currency? What are the impact of appreciation? What are the impact of depreciation on exports and imports? How appreciation and depreciation takes place? Who decides the exchange rate? What are the different methods of exchange rate? What do you mean by fixed exchange rate? What do you mean by flexible exchange rate? What do you mean by managed floating exchange rate? What do you mean by hybrid exchange rate? All these will be talking. We will also be studying about the meaning of context of purchasing power parity. Purchasing power parity. Then we'll be talking about balance of payment. Under balance of payment, we'll be talking about current account, capital account, errors and omissions, overall BOP balance, international liquidity movements. We'll be talking about FDI. We'll be talking about a foreign portfolio investment. We'll be talking about, external commercial borrowing. We'll be talking about banking capital. All these things will be studying under something called, balance of payment. Is it fine? बहुत कम पढ़ना है और इसके साथ साथ हमें क्या पढ़ना है? Current updates. Is up to this clear to you? Anyone having any question? Current updates will also include any government scheme, new government scheme programs which has been launched by Government of India. Understood? That's what we'll also be discussing. Largely, in other subjects, what you will be experiencing that in other subjects, they first of all teach macro part, then they teach, first of all they teach mains part and they go for prelims part. But for me, the challenge is that unless and until you understand these concepts, you will not be able to understand the, mains syllabus. Because these are concepts, these are basics, these are fundamentals. So what I do, I always go with this and then I take up mains related topics. Remember, for you all also, the challenge is not your mains related topics. The challenge is this. Once you are clear with these concepts, so the mains topics becomes very, very easy for you. You do not need to give larger inputs because your conceptual understanding, basic understanding of the subjects are very crystal clear. Is it fine, all of you? Now, once we are done with these topics, we'll be taking up GS paper 3, that is mains related topics, that is mains related topic. And under mains related topic, we'll be talking about the first topic will be our inclusive growth and issues. The first topic will be inclusive growth and issues. The second topic will be the second inclusive growth issues. The second topic will be your planning, largely 5-year plans. The third topic is mobilization of resources. Mobilization of resources. Then we'll be talking about investment/infrastructure.
These topics will be topics related to mains. Now, exploring these topics, when we talk about inclusive growth, here, inclusive growth means broad-based growth. Inclusive growth involves all the stakeholders of the society, irrespective of region, religion, language, caste, creed, gender. When the benefits of this growth touches each and every one in the society, the growth becomes inclusive. So largely, we'll be talking about the meaning in detail, touching different stakeholders. What are the limitations? Why in India we are not able to attain 100% inclusiveness? What are the major issues related to it? Indian government for the last 70-75 years have been introducing different schemes for the poor, for the marginal section. But why this benefit has not touched that section? It means the growth has not changed or transformed the life of millions of population in India. It means our growth is not inclusive. So as a policy maker, what you need to do, how you can ensure that growth can become inclusive, how you can ensure that overall the meaning of growth touched or transformed millions of population in India. So all these things will be studying under inclusive growth. Second is planning, 5-year plans. We need to understand meaning of planning. What are the different types of planning in India which we have adopted? What do you mean by rolling plan? What do you mean by fixed plan? What do you mean by imperative plan? What do you mean by indicative planning? What do you mean by induced plan? What was the role of planning commission? Role of planning commission before 1991 and role of planning commission, after 1991. Why Niti Aayog replaced planning commission? What was the logic behind it? All these discussions will take place under planning. Next is mobilization of resource. You all know, for any country's growth and development, resource mobilization becomes very, very important. Resource here does not mean only capital. Resource, I am also resource for a country, you are also resource for this country. So how mobilization of such resource can take place? So if you talk about human resource, how I can make you better skilled? What training I need to impart upon you all so that you can become skilled? So when you become skilled, largely you can be employed anywhere. You can be employed anywhere. And definitely when you will be employed anywhere, so the problems of unemployment can be resolved. So what in India we need to do for human resource? We need to develop, we need to spend on education, we need to spend on training, we need to spend on health services, because providing good health services is also important when we are trying to convert human resource into human capital. Apart from it, financial resources for any growth and development, financial resource also becomes important. No work can be completed when you do not have capital with you. So physical capital I'm talking about, physical capital. Physical capital in economics also pertains to plant and machinery. Plant and machinery, tools, technology, that also becomes part of resource. Land as a resource, water as a resource, how you can ensure water management in the country, how we can ensure land management in the country, all these will become part of something called resource mobilization. Today, few days back, larger few districts of Maharashtra, don't you think, the people there was struggling with even drinking water. So somewhere or other, as a policymaker, we need to intervene and we need to ensure that this important resource is available so that people or certain set of population being affected are should not be affected the way it is. So how water management can be done, how water harvesting can be done, how water conservation can be done. So all these will become part of mobilization of resources. Then we'll be talking about investment infrastructure. We'll be talking about public-private partnership models which are being applied in infrastructure investment. Apart from it, we'll also be discussing with few investment strategy which we have adopted in India after independence, whether it's Harrod-Domer model growth strategy, whether it's Mahal-Nobi's model, whether it's Levy's strategy, whether it's Gandhian philosophy, whether it's Nehruvian philosophy, whether it's Amartya Sen model, whether it's Jagdish Bhagwati model, all these things will be studying under investment. Once we are done with, we'll be talking about cropping pattern, agriculture and issues. There are different issues being faced by Indian agriculture, whether it's irrigation, whether the problem of irrigation, whether it's problem of credit, whether there are certain environmental challenges being faced by this sector, whether there are certain production linked challenges also. We are going from, we are moving from, agro industry to agroecology, that is, natural farming, organic farming. So that's what also can be one of the, topic for discussion under agriculture. Do you know today there is a need to change the cropping pattern also? So what are the different cropping patterns we follow and what are the needs, what are the changes required? That's what we'll be talking about. We'll also be talking about direct subsidies, indirect subsidies. What are the different form of subsidies which are given by government to our farmers? So you also know that subsidies are nothing but form of economic assistance. So what are the different forms of economic assistance? To what extent economic assistance can be given by the government to the farmers? What are the WTO rules and regulations? All these things will be discussing. Apart from it, we'll also be discussing land reforms. We'll also be talking about minimum support price. Minimum support price is one of the political issue, though it's an economic issue, but always it becomes a political debate in our country. The opposition says that ruling government is not increase the minimum support price. Why? The ruling government bet on it that minimum support price has been increased. So we need to understand the methodology as to how minimum support price is calculated. What do you mean by A1? What do you mean by A2 methodology? What do you mean by A2 plus FL? What do you mean by B1? What do you mean by B2? What do you mean by C1, C2, C3? There are different methodology of minimum support price calculation. Understood? So the relevance of this we'll be talking about. We'll also be discussing the analysis part as to what extent minimum support price can be given and should not be given. The pros and cons of it we'll be discussing during the class. Over and above, there are a few things which I've left. We need to understand international institutions as well. International institutions as well. International institutions means International Monetary Fund, World Trade Organization. It also means, World Bank and its different, units, the different partners like IDA, International Development Association, International Financial Corporation, Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency, International Center for Settlement of Investment Disputes. That's what we'll be discussing under, international institutions. Don't you think today, when Sri Lanka is in problem, when Pakistan is in problem, the role of IMF have increased, role of International Monetary Fund has increased. So why we need to understand I mean, the international and global developments also. Recently, you must have studied that there was G7 meeting and our Prime Minister was also invited, though India is not a member of G7. But before that, our Prime Minister also attended BRICS Summit. So what is the relevance of BRICS Summit to India? What is the relevance of G7 meeting to India? Why Indian Prime Minister has gone to UAE? What are the I mean, different trade and commerce deals we are going to do with UAE, United Arab Emirates. All these things will be our part of discussion. The last part, last but not the least, we'll also be discussing about there are social issues like garibi kyun hai, berozgari kyun hai, what are the different forms of poverty, what do you mean by poverty? I mean, what is the United Nations view about poverty? What is the World Bank's view about poverty? What are the different scholars say about poverty? What is the nature of poverty in developing countries? How this poverty can be resolved? How do we measure poverty in India? What do you mean by Lakrawala Committee? What do you mean by YK Alag Committee? What do you mean by Suresh Tendulkar Committee report? What do you mean by Rangarajan Committee? How they have measured, I mean, poverty in India? How Niti Aayog is measuring poverty? I mean, how poverty, the problem of poverty can be resolved in India? All these things will be discussing under poverty, under something called poverty. And once it is being done, then we'll be talking about unemployment, that is berozgari. What do you mean by berozgari? What are the different forms of unemployment? What do you mean by cyclic unemployment? What do you mean by natural unemployment? What do you mean by frictional unemployment? What do you mean by disguised unemployment? What do you mean by structural unemployment? Understood? All these will also be discussing. We'll also be discussing as to how unemployment is measured. What do you mean by CWS, current weekly status? What do you mean by current daily status? Understood? These are different ways wherein unemployment in India is measured. And how, what are the reasons behind unemployment in India and how the problem of unemployment can be resolved. Is it fine? Kafi lamba. Anyway, I'll must tell you that you'll be enjoying definitely. I'll make the sessions, I mean, quite interactive, wherein the requirement of UPSC is served, each fulfilled. I accept the fact that this subject is a bit technical. Yes, that's true. But then it's a bit analytical. And the more you will be making efforts, taking efforts, the better it will be for you, because the subject in real sense is very interesting. The other fact of this subject is that you must have experienced this, that when you travel by train or in a public place, when you come across, then there is a lot of people who discuss politics and economics as well, whether it has a meaning or not. When you know economics, at times now you will be fed up with those discussions, जिसका कोई भी मीनिंग नहीं होता है, बट आपको फोर्सेबली सुनना पड़ता है. मोदी जी ने ऐसा किया, उनकी ये पॉलिसी बहुत खराब है. You know, in India, most of the time, जिसने कभी क्रिकेट के फील्ड में गया भी नहीं है, वो भी विराट कोहली को गलत कहता है कि नहीं, कि उसको ऐसे बैट करना चाहिए था. Have you ever seen it? I mean, we often discuss or not. तेंदुलकर को तो ऐसा खेलना चाहिए था, विराट कोहली को ऐसा खेलना चाहिए था. जी, वो बंदा जो परसेप्शन ये बना रहा है ना, जो इतने ज्ञान दे रहा है, उसने अपने ही कभी बैट नहीं पकड़ा. But then most of the time it happens in economics issues also, that people in and around India is a democratic country, everyone has a right to, I mean, give their thoughts. But then, आप बताइए, in a crowd of 10 to 15 students, if you know economics and you are discussing the issues related to inflation, and if really you are adding value to it, trust me, the respect for you amongst those 10 people will increase like anything. If you know economics, that will not only help you in GS paper 3, but then your understanding and your contribution, its contribution to GS paper 2 also increases in international relations. अगर मैंने अभी आपको बोला ब्रिक्स बोला, मैंने G7 समिट बोला, आप बताइए, if you know economics, so definitely you can apply these in paper 2 as well. This subject also will help you in your essay writing and no doubt in your interviews. Because once you start understanding the economic concepts now, automatically your answers becomes very, very mature. So when you are being asked a particular issue as to what, as an administrator, what solution you can provide, so definitely your thought process, somewhere involves economic principles, and that's what becomes a point of differentiator between you and other students. So overall, if I'm talking about economics, so then this subject is not only help you in GS paper 3, though besides economics in GS paper 3 will be having science and technology also, will be having internal security also, but then this carries almost 40 to 45% of the part of GS paper 3. This subject will help you in GS paper 2, as I told you, will help you in essay writing also, and at the same time will help you in interview also, and that's why this subject becomes very, very important to you. One question pertaining to economics is often being asked by the students that, sir, to what extent, what is the relevance of data? To what extent facts you need to remember? See, as far as data is concerned, in economics, it is always expected that few of the data you need to mug up. Why? What is the need for it? The basic need is that if I'm saying that you are not a good girl, without any basis, without any justification, without any facts and figures, so what I'm trying, I'm only giving my opinion. But if I have data related to, that she is not punctual, she never comes in the class on time, she never does her homework. So based on the data, if I am justifying that you are not a good girl, so I have not simply stated my opinion, but I have justified my opinion also. If you are saying that poverty in our country has decreased or increased, or simply you are quoting, making a statement that India में गरीबी रेखा से लोग, गरीबी रेखा से नीचे बहुत लोग बढ़ गए या गरीबी रेखा से बाहर निकल गए. So when you are talking about that people in the country, more people have or are below poverty line, or they have come above poverty line, and you are not quoting any fact, you are not quoting numbers. So what I can tell? I can only tell now you are making your opinion. But if with this opinion, I do have the number with me also, that in 2014-15, this was the percentage of population below poverty line, and this year, this is the percentage of population below poverty line. So on that basis, I can make this justification that poverty in our country has decreased in these 5 to 6 years based on these numbers. And then I am not only making opinion, but I am justifying my opinion also. In economics, remember, don't make opinion. If you are making opinion, prove it. And that's why the rule of data becomes important. But to what extent? क्या इतना डेटा हम मगअप कर पाएंगे? नहीं, इतना मगअप करने की जरूरत नहीं है. There are few social issues or economic issues wherein you need to remember data. Let's say if I want to assess how Indian economy has performed over the last 75 to 80 years, so मुझे कहाँ का data लेना है? मैं देखूंगा कि what were the growth rate, what was the size of the GDP during 1950-51, during 1990-91, and now, and based on it, I can say that whether GDP growth has been positive or negative, or whatever the average GDP growth after independence. So if I do not have the numbers, how I'll be studying that whether GDP growth rate has increased or decreased since independence? If without data I am writing something, so what evaluator will understand? That I have made my opinion, nothing else. Similarly, if I am writing something on poverty, if I'm writing something on fiscal deficits, if I'm writing something on taxation, if I'm writing something on unemployment, if I'm writing something on महंगाई, so definitely I need to have data. Understood? So not कि सारे year wise data मुझे याद करने हैं, but there are few years which are very, very important from economics point of view. I mean, or during independence, or 1991, 2007-8, 2014-15, and now. At least for these years, since these years are significant from economic point of view, you need to mug up data of different economic issues and related of these years so that you can directly use it. The next thing which I told you, that this subject has relevance in, essay writing also. Don't you think at times you can get an essay on women empowerment? You can get an essay on poverty. You can get an essay on unemployment. See, once you are going through economic issues and you have read that particular topic in economics, you know the data also. Directly you can take those data, take those informations, take the concepts, and you can write in the essay. So that's where this subject gives you an edge as compared to other subjects. And apart from it, your interview. Is it fine? All of you? Next point of discussion as to, I already told you that how I'll be going. At the initial stage, my focus will be largely on your conceptual understanding. Why I'm saying so? The reasons are the trend of the questions being asked by UPSC from economics. If you go by the economics question this year, few of the questions were not expected, and the analysis and interpretation of those questions largely becomes difficult for you. But once you know the concepts, once you know the applications, so the questions will be very, very easy. You will not face that difficulty. So understanding of the concepts becomes very, very important, and that's why all these concepts which I have written here, that will be part of prelims. Each and every topic will be discussed with you in detail. If you go back and check this year's question, prelims question, then you may find that there were certain questions on bonds, inflation index bonds. There were certain questions on dated securities, wherein such questions are not expected.
But since these questions have been asked, I mean, as a teacher, when I'll be teaching you, I need to go in depth to that extent wherein next time if such questions are asked, you are in ready position to answer it. Not only related to that topic, it means I need to peep into other topics as well. It means depth of study, depth of teaching, in-depth teaching need to be done as far as each and every topics related to prelim is concerned. Now, last part, I'll be taking up how to develop your writing skills. See, when you make a plan, when you make a strategy regarding UPSC preparation, so that should be an integrated approach. UPSC की preparation में ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए कि this year I'll be focusing upon pre, mains, अगले साल फिर interview. It should not be. The focus should be in such a way that your study for prelims, mains and interview is integrated, linked. And if it is not linked, so you may find that after 2 to 3 attempts, you cleared prelims exam, but then you fail miserably in your mains. So you need not to look at prelims, but you need to look at your mains preparation. And once you are comfortable at mains preparation, so definitely, I mean, 50% of the prelims coverage is being done when you prepare for the mains. आप मॉडर्न इंडिया पढ़ रहे हैं फॉर मेंस पर्सपेक्टिव, तो व्हाट इज एक्सपेक्टेड कि प्रीलिम्स के भी आई मीन आप क्वेश्चंस कर सकते हैं वंस यू हैव गॉन थ्रू मॉडर्न इंडिया. हाँ, देयर आर सर्टेन टॉपिक्स, देयर आर सर्टेन सब्जेक्ट्स which are only part of prelims or only part of mains that you need to study separately. But if economics is concerned, as I told you, for economics a slight different pattern you need to follow. और मैंने आपको पहले बताया कि पहले concepts, fundamentals, and then we'll be going for mains. And under mains, it is being seen that those students who do not have clarity in their concepts, they do not get good marks in GS paper 3. In economics, you cannot create a story. In economics, you need to have clarity as far as the concepts are concerned. So how to go about it? How to improve your writing skill? When you'll be joining Unique Academy for GS paper 3, alternate Sunday, we do have, writing practices for you, also writing practice sessions on alternate Sunday, wherein you can come, you can join, and you can practice on the given question being given by the teacher, concerned faculty. You will be writing that answer there, and the same answer will be evaluated by the concerned faculty present. Because writing skill you cannot develop in a month or in a 2 months. That is a continuous exercise. And the best success mantra for developing a good writing skill is to write. The more you will be writing, the more you will be having control on use of words, the more your clarity about presentations you will be developing. So overall, all these things cannot happen in a day or two. These may take, 6 months, 8 months. You need to write more. At the initial stage, what you need to do, whenever you will be reading newspapers, please keep a notebook with you also. So whenever you read a particular article, whatever you have absorbed, try to write that summary of that article on the notebook so that it will not only give you an insight about what you have read in the newspaper, but at the same time, your writing skill will also be developed. So don't focus only on reading and reading. I mean, you need to, after reading, give a thought to it. And when you have given a thought to it, you need to write on a notebook that will simply develop your writing skill. Remember, in economics, what matters more is that simply reading is not important, simply writing is not important. What is more important is that if you are giving 10 minutes on reading a particular paragraph, give equally time or equal time for a thought over that paragraph also. So if I'm reading one article about her, so after reading, I need to analyze. So when I start thinking about that article, different issues will crop up in my mind. And that's what UPSC requires. If I'm studying a particular article on poverty or unemployment or inflation or deficits, so after reading that article, I should start analyzing that article. What are the issues behind inflation? What are the issues behind poverty? What are the problems in Indian context? What are the challenges with the government? How inflation in India can be controlled? Why most of the time food price inflation is very, very high? So these type of discussions should happen. And how discussions on your own, start thinking over it, start visualizing it, and definitely you will come to know that over a period of time, your analysis about a particular topic is being broad based. And when it has become broad, so definitely you will start recollecting different set of information. I mean, there will be times where you'll be confused, when you will be having conflicting ideas. Do come, ask, discuss with your teacher, and definitely a time will come when you will be completely commanding this particular subject. There is nothing called shortcut. Economics में ऐसा मत सोचना कि किसी दुकान में एक छोटी सी बुक आई है जिसमें पूरा पॉइंट वाइज इकोनॉमिक्स को बताया गया है, उसको पढ़ लेने से ट्रस्ट मी यू विल बी ऑफ नोवेयर. That is not required in economics, and that is not required in UPSC. In UPSC, you need to, I mean, have clarity about the concepts. It's not about mugging up informations. It's all about having conceptual clarity and application of those economics principles. Interpretations of those economic principles. Why? I'm giving an example. Let's say today, if RBI has increased the repo rate, so you should first of all understand what do you mean by repo rate. Why, under what circumstances RBI increases the repo rate? What will be its repercussions in the market? Whether this will lead to increase in interest rate or decrease in interest rate. If increasing interest rate, what will be its impact on demand? If that will be impacting demand, what will be the impact on price? See, there are different cause and effect kind of relationships or not. A simple variable called increase in repo rate by RBI has taken place. So the clarity should not be only of repo, meaning of repo, but at the same time, you need to understand the consequence of, I mean, whether once a repo rate is increased or decreased. Similarly, if you are reading an article on BRICS summit or G7 summit, you need to have clarity in mind. What do you mean by G20? What do you mean by G7? What do you mean by BRICS? What do you mean by group of 30 developing countries? Why
what does G7 stands for? What is the importance of India when Indian Prime Minister is attending G7 summit? What are the different type of, discussions which have taken place under G7? What is the core issue which was taken up in under G7? Why India is being invited, though India is not a member of G7? There are endless questions will come to your mind, and being UPSC aspirant, you need to have answers for all these questions. So unless and until you give a thought to it, your efforts for UPSC will not bear fruitful result. So you need not only to read, not only to write, but over and above, you need to have a thought process also. Whatever you read anywhere, be it in newspapers, when you are going through any electronic media, or when you are going through Raj Sabha televisions, you are where you are listening to different speakers. So then you do have a clarity. So overall, we discussed the meaning of economics. We discussed the syllabus related to economics. We discussed the study material which will be referring. I told you, you need to refer to a newspaper. You need to refer to class notes, the study material being given by Unique Academy. At the same time, you need to refer NCERT books of 11th and 12th. That's all. When you are attending the lectures, this will be sufficient. I have not asked anyone here, I have not asked about any reference book. Reasons are, if you are attending lectures, I think there is no need. But if over a period of time, I found you that you are completely clear, so definitely I can ask then for going for a reference book, which you may go, which you may not go for that also. There are many good books available where that can give larger dimensions to a particular issue or a particular topic. So there I can specifically recommend to read those books. You need to go through economic survey and the budget. These discussions also will take place in the class, and apart from it, notes related to economic survey and budget also is being provided. The writing also, I told you, for developing your writing skills on fortnightly basis on each Sunday, on every alternate Sunday, we do have writing practice sessions for you. So there you can come on a particular subject, you can write, and assessment can be done also based on model answers being discussed with you all about that question. Over and above, we also discuss how we'll be going forward. I told you, first of all, I'll be taking topics related to concepts which are prelims focused, and then subsequently I'll be taking up topics related to mains, and in between the current updates or current of topics related to any current developments also will be taken up. So this is all about the strategy which we follow at Unique Academy as far as this subject is concerned. So I think this will be, if you'll be following what I have said, so that will be more than enough for you. Anything which I have missed, definitely in the class I'll be coming across and ensuring that anything and everything is served to you, given to you in every form possible, which can help you in, which can help you in preparation for your UPSC. Apart from it, I'll also be discussing with you in the class questions related to prelims and what should be your strategy to attempt prelims based questions. So this, topic wise, I'll be taking up also in the class, and that's what is the comprehensive package which I discussed with you as far as this paper, this subject is concerned. The forum is open to you. If you can have any question, you can ask. Anything which you want to ask, most welcome.